Hello and welcome back to our show. Now, Westminster is back this week, so we wanted to bring you one of the biggest voices in British politics, Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner. She's a politician with working-class roots from the left of the party who was promoted to the front bench in her first few months as an MP. But her rise wasn't without controversy, especially as the party shifted back to the centre ground under Sir Keir Starmer. But she's never stopped speaking her mind.
People have underestimated me all my life, if I'm honest, and I remember the stigma that I faced when I was a young mum at 16, and it still burns now.
Leader of the Opposition, Angela Rayner.
I'd revel in the opportunity for the people of this country to have more than just by-elections to see what they think of this government opposite. Call a general election and see where the people are. Prime Minister, how's it going? Are you OK?
It's great to be here with the Right Honourable Lady, the Shadow Secretary of State, for the future of work. We know the future of the job that she has in mind.
There might be a vacancy for Prime Minister soon, so maybe I should have aspirations.
The reason I was so upset about what the government did, especially on the school meals, was because I was a child that was hungry.
And the Prime Minister describes my constituents as letterboxers, and then my constituents to suffer the racism on our streets. That's why I get passionate.
If the Prime Minister wants to remove himself from those comments, I'm quite happy to apologise for calling him scum.
We're the party that's going to win. We're the party of government. Let's rise to the moment with a Labour government in power once again.
Now, the Labour leadership wants an election, but can they really win? Latest polling suggests they can. Months of chaos in the Conservative Party have gifted Labour a golden opportunity, with 46% of voters now set to back them. Angela Rayner, then, looks on course to becoming the next Deputy Prime Minister. The task now, don't slip up and convince voters you have the credentials to govern. The public will, though, need to hear solutions to ongoing strikes, the growing pressure on the NHS and a cost of living crisis squeezing us all. So, what does Labour have to offer the country? Angela Rayner, thanks for coming on the show today. And I want to talk a lot about Angie Rayner, the woman, who you are and your political views. But before I get on to that, I want to talk to you about the story dominating politics at the moment is, of course, the NHS. Now, Keir Starmer has said that the NHS is not on its knees, it's on its face. So for voters watching this interview, can you tell us whether if they do vote Labour in 2024, they can be confident that the NHS will get more money under a Labour government?
Well, we're very clear. It's not just about what money is invested in the NHS. It's also about where that money's going to. Social care has been absolutely decimated since 2010. I was a home care worker, worked in social care, adult social care, and many of the colleagues who were trained up under the last Labour government to deliver care in the community were then made redundant under the cuts that were given to local government. So we've got a real crisis now, not just affecting our NHS, but because we're not able to give primary care in the community. And our focus is not only around bringing waiting lists down like the last Labour government did, but about investing in social care and care in the community so that people get the care when they need it.
You know, Boris Johnson did try and put more money into social care. He announced a tax raising plan. It was going to put £12 billion in tax rises to put into social care. Now, the Conservatives have since reversed that policy. But in principle, did you agree with that idea that you have to raise taxes in order to better fund the health service and social care?
Now, I think at the moment, because we're spending so much money on people being in hospital beds when it's not required, people not getting the early intervention in social care that they need, we're spending huge amounts of money on giving people care at the wrong time in the wrong place. I have actually been inspired by the work we did in local government back when I was a home carer that meant more people were delivering the service in their own homes when they needed it and preventing them going into chronic care and into hospitals. You will save huge amounts amounts of money that can be redirected into community care. So whilst at the beginning you may have to bring in reforms and it may take a bit of time to move that money away from other services to put into preventative care, I actually think the key to this is not just about just throwing money at it, it's about the reforms that you can make to give people the care when they need it the most.
But given the situation in the NHS, and a lot of people watching this will think the notion of Labour ahead of election committing to put more money into the NHS more than the Tories would do, it's not a particularly controversial expectation for voters to have, but you don't want to commit to that.
No, it's not the cure. This is what I'm trying to get over to people. It's not just about throwing money into the NHS. The NHS needs support, or it needs staff, proper staff, rather than agency workers and the vacancies we have, because people are overworked and having to work more. We've got waiting lists where people are getting more and more unwell, so people are needing more help, so it's costing the NHS and it's costing taxpayers more.
So, Angie, you as the Deputy Leader at the moment, not committing to putting any more money into the NHS, you're going to stick with the Conservative spending plans.
Well, we've said
I know you've got the non-dom...
No, but for example, we've said the non-dom status will pay for staff in the NHS.
You've got a specific measure for staffing, but beyond that, no more money.
But the staffing issue is a crucial issue because we're spending huge sums of money on agency workers. We're spending huge sums of money on people getting more and more unwell.
You've committed to 3.2 billion of a non-dom tax that you will use to fund training of nurses and doctors. But beyond that, what you're saying at the moment is no overt commitment from Labour for more spending.
It's about spending in the right place.
I get it, I hear it.
And you will save money and you will give people the care they need the most.
That's helpful clarification that you are online, as on the left of the party, you're aligned with Starmer and Wes Streeton about no more commitment on spending.
Yeah, I'm confident we can help the NHS. We'll spend more on recruitment, and also we will give people the right care when they need it the most.
I don't want to get too bogged down in this, so let's move on to something else, which is private healthcare. Now, the Prime Minister's got stick for not answering the question about whether he was registered with a private GP, whether he still is. He won't say. He says it's a private matter. Do you agree with that, or do you think he should tell the public?
No, I think it's completely his choice if he does have private healthcare, but he should tell the public about that. I think it is important. I don't have private healthcare, never have.
Have you ever used private healthcare?
Well, I'm on the record saying that I had a procedure done on me when I was younger that I paid for myself, a not one-off procedure. So that would be considered that I use that service, but certainly not for my day-to-day stuff. And in fact, my son was born at 23 weeks gestation, and if it wasn't for the NHS, quite frankly, my son wouldn't be here today. So I value the NHS. There's no way I could have been able to help my son survive and get through that period without the NHS. There's no way I could have afforded that.
Would you ever use private health? I mean, I know you're talking about a kind of cosmetic procedure, but would you ever use private health if you couldn't get an appointment, or just on principle you wouldn't feel comfortable doing that?
I think we should be supporting our NHS because it's so important that people need to be able to get the care for the issues that... These are chronic issues. We've got to fix the NHS and it's so important. And I'm sorry, but Rishi Sunak looked out of touch when he talked about it not being an NHS crisis at the moment. I've seen many consultants, doctors and nurses who are literally saying, I've never seen it so bad in the NHS at the moment. And people are genuinely frightened. That I'm frightened that if you try and contact the NHS when you need it, that they're not going to be able to get to you, because we've had alerts about ambulances. Don't ring for an ambulance, you won't be able to get one.
At the moment, Labour is using private provision for the NHS. That's quite a big change from Starmer's original position in 2020 when he was elected to be leader, to end outsourcing in the NHS. Do you think it should be Labour's aspiration to end that use of private healthcare as soon as capacity can be found in the NHS, i.e. that's a sticking plaster to fix a particular problem post-pandemic, and that it should end as soon as possible? What's your position on that?
Our position is very clear on it, that we would use the capacity in the private sector to bring down those waiting lists in the short term.
And then you stop doing that.
But in the long term, we've also got the commitment to invest more in the NHS by creating more vacant, recruitment for doctors, for nurses, for healthcare assistants, for midwives, so that we can increase the capacity within the NHS. So we want to end outsourcing.
You've always been, if you like, a standard bearer, I would say, of the left of the party. I know that you were elected in your own right and you have your own political identity, but for lots on the left, you're their woman in shadow cabinet. You served in Corbyn's shadow cabinet as shadow education secretary. Does it trouble you sometimes that Keir Starmer's abandoned so many of his pledges, the ones that were designed to show the left he could be trusted, that he abandoned so many of those pledges that he made in 2020 to be elected? It's awkward, isn't it?
What I would say, and the overriding principle, is about delivery, and delivery for the public. You know, the last Labour government, and this I spoke about it when I was in Corbyn's shadow cabinet, the last Labour government delivered so much for working class people like me, from the council estates that I grew up on, from the Shaw Start Centre, from the free adult education, from the support that I was given, you know, with income support, getting back into work, the tax credit system that the last Labour government brought in. All of those things delivered, enabled me to get on in life and to be sat in front of you here today. So it's about delivery. We're not about we're not about ideological. We're driven about how can we deliver pragmatically, based in what we're going to be, you know, if we win the next election, what we're going to inherit from the government, which is a very bad economic situation. You know, productivity's low in the UK. We've got a plan on how we deliver to improve our public services and deliver productivity and fix the economy. And that's the overriding pitch for us. It's not an ideologically driven.
So is it like
it's about delivering for people.
Is it sort of sacrifice principles for power, or don't let principles block the route to power?
Don't let principles block the investment and the support and the delivery for the British public. You know, principles are important. I've got those principles, and I actually think those principles will deliver. But it's also important that people can see that you've got a radical plan, but a realistic and responsible plan. It's the 3 R's for me: radical, realistic and responsible.
So in a way, Angie, have you been on your own journey in the sense that you've been in the shadow cabinet, you've been out of power, you've been working really hard, but you can't actually affect change? And
I mean,
for
it's
you,
devastating. For 7
years,
years since I became a Labour MP, I've watched us lose votes time and time again. I developed a National Education Service, I've developed the National Procurement Plan, an Ethics and Integrity Commission, the Future of Work, the programme that we've got. None of that will ever happen unless we convince the British public that we are responsible about getting into government and we can deliver on that programme. And that's what we're focused on. It's not about getting rid of my principles. I believe in my principles and I continue to. But, you know, when I was a free school meals kid, principles would not have fed me. It was the free school meals programme that the Labour government brought in. When I was a mum at 16, it was the Shaw Start Webster Stratton programme that Labour brought in that was able to help me to become a good mum and to look after my son.
what's your message to the left of the party when they look at Starmer and he says, I'm not getting the spending cheque out, there won't be any more money for the NHS, we have to stick within Conservative Party spending guidelines? And the left of the party go, hang on a minute, this isn't what I signed up for, this isn't what I believe, this isn't what I want. What's your message to the left of the party? What, hang in there, we can be more radical in government? What do you want to say to them?
I would argue that Keir isn't saying we have to stick to Conservative spending plans. Keir's very clear that actually Conservatives have been disastrous for this country. Productivity is low, they crashed the economy, our public services have been, downtrodden and are in a critical state because of the lack of investment from the government. He's talked about, actually, we do need radical programmes. Great British Energy is a radical programme. Our Green New Deal are looking at how we can do New Deal for working people. It's about raising standards and about doing things in the long term to put the country on a better footing.
So I know it's a bit ahead, but in 1997, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown promised to stick to Tory spending plans for 2 years. So you wouldn't accept that? That's not where you're at.
At the moment, the Tories have completely crashed the economy. Inflation's at its highest level. Tax is at its highest level. We don't want to do what the Conservatives have done for the last 13 years because they've run down public services and they've failed to invest in our economy.
It's about trust, isn't it? And the reason I want to raise that with you, Angie, is because, and I'll move on after this, but just finally on the Starmer issue, he did make big pledges in writing, rather like a manifesto internally for Labour members, in which he said, and I'll quote it, public services in energy and water he wanted in public hands. He now seems to have abandoned all of that agenda but rail. So how can people trust him? Because he says one thing to get elected,
I mean,
and then he does something else. How
I don't
can
think
trust
he
him?
has abandoned them. What he's talked about is realistically, what are our priorities in a Labour government and how do we deliver better for the public?
Looks, right?
I get that some people are trying to say, if you say this at this particular time, then you've got to stick to that forever. But actually what Keir said is Great British Energy, which will be, you know, a corner of what we do in government. He's talked about investing in public services. He's talked about improving workers' rights for the New Deal for working people. So actually the theme of what we're trying to do is to say, actually, yes, this is a government that will reform Britain to get productivity moving again and to increase the support to our public sector and improve it.
One thing Starmer did tell The Guardian, he doesn't want a wealth tax, which is you pay 1% tax on those earning above 10 million quid, you'll know that, or with assets above, or wealth above 10 million pounds. But he did say dividends and rental incomes are the sort of things he considered. Is it time for landlords to pay more?
Well, I think at the moment people are seeing their rents going up, and actually at the same time as people have had, you know, their tax burden go up, at the same time landlords are not paying extra on their properties when they've got a huge amount of a property portfolio. So of course that's something that we should look at, because again, like I say, the principle is around fairness.
When Keir Starmer did his speech last week, and the main thing about the radical vision was about devolution and pushing power back into communities, but it wasn't about tax and spending. And it struck me, it reminded me of the Roy Jenkins description of Tony Blair in '97, that he was man, and you'll know it, carrying a priceless Ming vase across a highly polished floor, i.e. he didn't want to slip up, he didn't want to do anything that spooked voters. He just wanted to make sure that they won that election, even though he was miles ahead in the polls. Is that kind of where Keir Starmer's at now and where you're at now as well?
But where we're at is, I mean, in 2019, we got one of our worst defeats in history, you know, to come to where we are today, to get the voters to even give us the opportunity to speak to them, is quite an achievement, and we understand that, and we understand the volatility in that as well, and the preciousness in the way that the public still need to see more from Labour in order for, we don't take the polling for granted, for example. We know there's a long way for us to go, so we're doing that. But we also know, if you looked at the last 12 months, who'd have thought the Tories would have crashed the economy, and Liz Truss would have, within 40 days, did what she did. So who knows where we're going to be in 12 months' time.
The Johnson implosion followed by the Truss economic difficulties. I mean, it's been great for you, hasn't it?
Well, it's great for the Labour. Personally, I'm spending more on my mortgage and everything. It's not been that great, I can tell you. If you're living in this country at the moment, the Truss regime was disastrous.
No, and that's
absolutely. And even actually, to be fair to Rishi Sunak, even he predicted that this would be a disaster. But he was in the cabinet that allowed that to happen.
People are having to remortgage now in a very different environment, and it's put pressure on
people. And it will
schools.
also impact on the next Labour government, because we won't be able to do what we want to do because they've wrecked the economy.
It was politically good for you in that it's prompted people to take another look at Labour, yeah?
Well, no, because I think part of the reason, the Tories have disastrously failed, and I think that's part of why the polling is where it is today. But actually, Keir and my leadership, I think, has shown that the Labour Party is changing, and I think that's what's giving us an opportunity. You can't just rely on the Conservatives doing a very bad job.
When you arrived in Westminster 7 years ago, and you know you left school, you had a baby when you were 16.
16, yeah.
You became a union rep and you became very successful, and then now you're the deputy leader of the Labour Party, elected by members. You know, you own that. That's not patronage from Starmer. That's you earned that job. You have done incredibly well. You've probably defied expectations about people around you, perhaps when you were younger, about what your limitations could or couldn't be, right? When you got to Westminster, did you just think there's no one like me here, no one gets it, no one has a not backstory, but no one's from a background like I am, and these people just don't get it? Was it lonely or difficult?
I didn't understand that it was such a big network here. I never, I've been to London a couple of times as a union rep to our headquarters for the union, but before then, I mean, when I was growing up, my world was 3 streets on the estate I grew up in. I didn't even go to Manchester. I lived in Stockport, which is a town just outside of Manchester. Manchester was a huge thing, never mind London, never mind, politics and government. But the driving force that I've always had is about trying to do the right thing. My nana taught me that. She said, always do your best. always do your best, and I've always tried to do the right thing. And when I became pregnant at 16, I wanted to prove that I could be a good mum. I wanted to, you know, love my child and do the best I can for him. The fact that I wasn't able to parent him well until I understood that, you know, the needs of being a good parent was not my fault. The fact that I was struggling at the beginning and had to have income support to help me, it wasn't necessarily my fault. There was factors in my life that made those challenges more severe for me. So now I have an understanding that, you know, me being in a unique, privileged position of being here is about delivery for the people that, like me, needs that change now and needs someone that understands their challenges that they face. Nobody likes living in poverty. It's not fun. It's not fun living with a chronic condition and not being able to get the support you need so you can go out to work. It makes you feel like you're an inadequate person because you can't deliver. Government, to me, is about delivering, understanding that those challenges that people face and then delivering them the opportunities and the hope that they can have a better future. That's what Labour did for me. That's why I'm in the Labour Party now, to deliver that. And if I become Deputy Prime Minister, that will be my focus, is my driving force is to deliver for people so that they can better their lives and improve their circumstances.
Do you think that it does remain a barrier? Like, you might believe that you can do it, but in a very stratified society driven by class identification, if you like, that even if you believe it, the public maybe don't. Is that a barrier?
I mean, class is still, I think, a really big issue. Social and economic situations of people, where they start from. We've seen social mobility, you know, decrease over the last 13 years, and we've seen inequality grow in this country. I think they are big barriers, and you can't get away from them. They're reality. I've seen it every day, the misogyny that I faced, and, you know, people who are watching this will know that in their everyday lives. But I think that one of the reasons that I still get up in the morning, I think, no, I'm not going to be disgraced into saying, you know, I feel bad about my accent, or I'm not worthy enough to be here, is because I am worthy enough to be here. I have a Manchester accent, but it's because where I grew up. And if you go to my local boozer, they all sound like me, because that's how we sound where I'm from. And I'm not perfect. I'm not. I do make mistakes, but everybody does. And I think the more human I can be and not try to be something I'm not try and inspire to be something I'm not, and just try and make the change because I care enough to want to change things for people, I think is the best way I can change it for the next generation.
Famously, you were accused of crossing and uncrossing your legs to distract Boris Johnson, which I know must have really upset you. You were then also, you gave this very interesting, lengthy interview in the Financial Times, a really long piece about your background and your political beliefs and your struggles and your triumphs. And the only part anyone reported from that was your boob job. Is that frustrating for you? Do you just think, come on, like, why it's sexist?
It is a little bit, but it's also about, I'm an open book. You know, I don't try and, I say Keir undershares and I overshare. That's the difference between me and Keir. I will overshare. And part of that is about, I am just a normal person like everybody else, you know, but it is frustrating when you see the misogyny that I face, you know, that onslaught suggesting, you know, ludicrously that I cross and uncross my legs. It's the last thing I think about, quite frankly, when I'm doing PMQs. I'm thinking I need to do a good job here, thinking about what I'm going to ask and about the issues of the day. I'm not thinking about, is somebody looking at my legs? It's just ridiculous to think that. But women face that every single day. So if I go, oh, this is, you know, I've got to take it on. And what really gave me comfort actually about that is every time I've been attacked for things like that, the public have really pushed back and said, actually, no, hang on a minute. This is not okay. To attack Angie on her policies, attack Angie on her politics professionally, but on her appearance, how she speaks, you know, that's not acceptable. And that's given me a huge amount of faith in the British public, because they see through that. They don't want to see that side of their politics. They want to know you're going to do a good job for them and their family.
Did you wish you hadn't talked about that procedure now, or were you just like...
No, because I just think it's who I am. You know, this is what people face every single day. You know, I'd had my children, you know, I'd lost 6 stone in weight after I had my children, and there was nothing I could do for it, you know, there was nothing else I could do but that, and it was causing me emotional distress. I chose, out of my own money that I worked hard for, to pay to have that procedure done. I think that's quite a challenge that most women face. They can make that decision. If you want to wear makeup, that's your decision. What you want to wear is your decision. It shouldn't detract from you as a professional or you as a human being. I think that's quite the most normal thing that you can do. And I'm not going to pretend that having those challenges in life and making choices like that are not something that I make as an individual myself.
It also makes you more human.
I am human. I have the challenges every other woman faces. I worry I'm not doing enough for my children when I'm at work. I worry I'm not doing enough for work when I'm at home. You know, we all have these challenges and I worry about those things. And I think the more you can be honest and open about how you are as an individual, I think I'm not expecting everyone to be the same as me, but just to say I'm just normal. I just have the same challenges everybody else faces.
We've been doing a thing on Westminster Accounts. Just quickly, is being an MP a full-time job, do you think? Do you think people shouldn't have second jobs?
I do think it's a full-time job, and we've said that in government we'd set up an ethics commission, and therefore they would then look at what we consider to be, obviously, if you're an emergency doctor, being able to practice to keep your doctorate is important, but actually the ethics commission would look at that. But I don't think that second jobs is what MP should be about. We should be focused on. I mean, I don't get time in the day to do my day job and look after the children.
I'm going to finish now, but I did have a quick look at your earnings. They're 1,400 quid. Yeah. Right, so you're not. You get lots of donations for your office, but in terms of your earnings,
I mean, the amount of money that I'd received previously was to do with the deputy leadership campaign. Because in order to run for deputy leader, I had to have a team and we were able to go up and down the country. That's not funded by the taxpayer. It's not funded by the Labour Party.
That's also a bit of a barrier, isn't it?
So it is a barrier. It is a huge barrier. But the reason why those monies, and they're openly declared, were because otherwise, if I hadn't had that donations, I wouldn't have been able to run to be deputy leader of the Labour Party.
Look, but someone like David Lammy, though, he's made a lot of money, yes, from radio shows, but also from speeches like of JP Morgan and Facebook and Google. Do you think MPs should do that? I'm not talking about David per se, but is that something you think MPs maybe shouldn't do, or is that a grey area?
I think it's a bit of a grey area, because if it enables you to get out to the public and enables you to raise your voice in the arena as a substantial person, then I think that's quite an important part of what you do as an MP anyway. And it's not just about how much you earn from it, it's actually about how does that contribute to your job as an MP and to public life as a politician. Making huge amounts of money off, things that don't actually represent your constituents, I think is a different matter. But I don't think it's for me to decide that. This is why we'd set up an independent ethics commission that looks at these things.
And I'm just going to ask you one more thing, because I'm totally pushing my luck, but strikes. Your work, you obviously in the Cabinet Office. If you become Deputy Prime Minister, do you still want to have the Cabinet Office job? Do you want to be? So you want to run the Cabinet Office? So you're working on all the anti-strike, the government working on the anti-strike legislation. Yeah. What's your message? You were a union rep yourself.
Yeah.
What's your take on the strike situation?
Government's own assessment says it won't work, this legislation they want to bring in. Actually, it's stoking up tensions. And actually, at the moment, I've known for years. I mean, even when I went on industrial action, we always had derogations and exemptions. I mean, we saw more ambulance staff in that day than we saw on a picket line, because they were out, obviously, doing their job. It's ridiculous what the government are doing. They've stoked up the tensions. They're deliberately trying to make a straw man over the strike actions. No General Secretary of a trade union can force their members out. It's the last thing that trade union members want to do, go in industrial action. This government has closed down talks, thrown spanners in the works at the last minute, and has deliberately tried to stoke up the tensions and then say it's the union barons' fault. The unions want to find a negotiated settlement. They did in Wales, and we would deliver that as a Labour government. And we can see that the challenges that working people face today on the inflation, on the cost of living, are because of this mismanagement of the economy, because of this government. And Labour will change that. So we will make the economy grow, we will deliver for public services, and we will negotiate with the trade unions in a constructive way.
OK, well, Angela Rayner, thank you so much for giving me so much of your time. And we got through a lot of ground there, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. A candid Angela Rayner there on a crucial year ahead for the Labour Party and its hopes of regaining power. And if you scan this QR code on screen now, you can watch all of our interviews online and all of the previous episodes of the show. Well, that's all for this week's show. Thank you to my guest, Angela Rayner, and thank you for watching. It's great to be back.